Those that work the land know this. Our lives are drawn from the earth, our food from the soil that we tend. We are custodians. We protect it, we defend it, we seek to share the abundance for the common good.
Australia's prosperity was built on the wise use of its natural bounty. Fertile land, mineral resources, hard work and abundant energy. Energy powers our farms, our industries, our transport and our homes. It sustains modern life and underwrites national strength.
Energy security is economic security. Economic security is national security. A country that cannot rely on affordable, abundant and reliable energy puts its prosperity, its sovereignty and its freedom at risk.
We believe Australia should use all its resources wisely and in a national interest so that our children inherit a country that remains productive, secure and free.
Recent events have shown us how carelessly we have ruined our inheritance. We sit on vast reserves of coal, oil and gas, but we are not fuel secure. We are not fertiliser secure, so we are not food secure. This is a warning. Any future serious disruption to regional sea lanes would cripple the nation and empty our supermarket shelves.
We stand on a simple principle. Political power exists to serve the people, and the first duty of the state is the well-being of the nation and its communities.
We have not been well served. Our liquid fuel security is running dry, and our electricity system has been diverted from delivering cheap, abundant power to chasing targets and slogans. Policy unmoored from physics and economic reality has turned an energy-rich land into a decadent state.
So we reject the sacrifice of productive farmland and natural habitat to sprawling industrial wind and solar estate strung together by vast transmission networks. In a perversion of environmentalism, our landscape is being despoiled in the name of saving the planet.
We're calling for an urgent review into an energy policy that was never built for purpose. Billions of dollars have been spent on wind and solar projects that only deliver part-time power. Billions more on transmission that's required to bind it all together, and then good money after bad to back up a system where failure is a design feature. The result is a weaker, less resilient, but more costly energy system. And the proof of that is in everyone's power bill. Australians are paying more and getting less. Energy users are suffering, while developers from offshore are being subsidised.
This is not nation building, it's a misallocation of capital. The scaling of unproductive generation is delivering a less productive nation. We are willfully turning a rich nation into a poorer one.
No sector is being asked to bear more than agriculture and regional communities. Farmers are expected to yield their land, pay the price of mitigation, shoulder the cost of adaptation, and go on feeding the nation as if none of this has consequences.
Those that live off the land and sustain Australia and many beyond cannot be sacrificed to an energy and climate policy that destroys the economics of production. We say that a free and secure nation producing food and energy in abundance, responsibly and sustainably, is the best contribution Australia can make to society.
We will defend the land we know, the communities we have built, and the legacy we hold in trust for those that come after us. To keep Australia prosperous, sovereign, and free is our duty, and in an uncertain world, our best defence.
And a very good morning. It's a Monday morning, nice to have your company, the 29th of June. Hasn't the year flown by? I just think it's been absolutely incredible, to say the least. Got some great guests on today. We're going to continue our our look at the Invasive Species Council, of course, and of course the terrible things that are happening to the Brumbies. Australians should never do that to their mates, and that's what we're doing at the moment. A terrible, terrible thing. But first of all, some of the news that's making news right around Australia, and a bit of a shock and horror for those relying on the fuel prices to stabilise and the accessibility to fuel. Because Iran says it has no choice but to develop a nuclear bomb. A media outlet linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has declared in the latest threat to the peace deal. If that happens, there will be no peace deal. At the moment, there is no peace deal. It's like, what did Donald Trump say? Iran will not exist. Great way to do a peace deal, isn't it? You agree to me or I'm going to bomb you. Anyway, they continue on, so fingers crossed that the federal government can get its act together and make sure that we have available supplies of fuel and fertiliser. Aussie farmers are leaving major money on the table as exorbitant federal fees and dragging review timelines effectively lock out a massive group of foreign buyers. Wage increases, environmental protection changes, and country of origin labelling are some of the new laws farmers will need to be aware of from July 1 as federal and Victorian legislation reforms kick in. One of the, I think it was helped out by China. Some of these, you need to look at it. It's a bit of a shocker if you're a farmer. I mean, life will get considerably harder, I believe. Australian beef exports have reached 91% of South Korea's low tariff quota limit, with a near five-fold tariff hike expected within weeks. I'm full of good news, aren't I? But if you're an Aussie, it's sort of good news. I feel a bit sad, actually. England's Test captain Ben Stokes has announced he's retiring from international cricket after the third Test against New Zealand, which is very sad. And welcome back to the Country Telegraph. Not a bad morning around the country. Some rain and drizzle in places, but we are expecting the El Nino. Let's see if the Weather Bureau can get that right. We'll check on the long-range weather forecast too in this hour, so don't go away. Plenty of things happening. Peter Cochran is the Principal Director of Cochran Horse Treks. Now, Peter has been running Cochran Horse Treks for over 25 years. He is fifth-generation mountain cattleman and has been riding the snowy mountains his entire life. He is well-versed in Australian history and mountain culture. Now, Peter was the National Party member for Monaro in the New South Wales Legislative Assembly from 88 to 1998. Peter Cochran, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
Tell me about your views on the cull right now. It has. I saw that Jack Gough said that it's all about, we're too emotional. We just got to get rid of these bloody horses. And if you look at Jack Gough's eyes, they look a bit like Clockwork Orange on steroids. That's just my own humble opinion. What's your views?
I like your humble opinion. It's an atrocity, Mike. You can't believe the barbaric nature of this and the way they've gone about it. apart from the total dishonesty in the foundation for and the reasoning for engaging in this behaviour, that's the first thing, is that the government has been misled and may, through their own intentions, want to get rid of the Brumbies, but they're being led by the Invasive Species Council and others, to the extent that they're now claiming that in just recent times that the horse numbers have even quadrupled in 2 years. I mean, this is a biological impossibility, and we can demonstrate that they are lying. They're lying through their teeth. And so my attitude towards the entire operation is that it's firstly unnecessary, because the horses are not damaging the country as claimed by the Invasive Species Council. Much of the land where these horses are occupying were old goldfields. They're currently a part of the Snowy 2 development, and I know we may speak about that later. But the fact is that all of this land that's used, which is subalpine, not alpine, the claims that they're damaging pristine alpine areas is an absolute nonsense. There are no horses in the pristine alpine areas. And so the basis for the entire exercise, which just alone, the cost of the shooting is $8 million to the taxpayer, they can't justify that. Dead horses all over the place, impact on the current tourist industry, negative impact on young people going up in the mountains, seeing carcasses all over the place. This has been, one of the worst exercises in government management I have seen in my 80 years on this earth.
It's not how Australians should act, is it? I mean, we put the thing out 2 days ago saying Aussies have each other's backs. This would disagree with that, because what we're seeing is Canberra, and we're seeing the big smoke, referring to these animals as feral, they're wild. But it's not how we should act. We have a long history with the Brumby, don't we?
We do have a long history with the Brumby, and it goes back to the days of settlement. And many of the horses that came from India and Africa and other parts of the world, but particularly those areas, can be traced with their DNA back to settlement and the original Brumbies. And one of our members, supporters of the Brumbies, Mel Rowe, has done an amazing amount of work on DNA and traced the DNA of these horses back to settlement. They have been a part of our recreation. They've been a part of our industries, our agriculture. They're basically a fundamental foundation of our transport network throughout Australia. And even the explorers were on horseback and supplemented with camels. I mean, this goes right back to the foundation of Australia's history and settlement. So, and I think that largely, Mike, the one of the reasons that maybe the underlying reasons for this activity and wanting to get rid of the entire herd of the Brumbies goes back to colonisation and the left wing view that everything that's associated with colonisation is bad, and therefore we should rid the country of it, which includes much of our cultural history and our spiritual history. And these people seem obsessed with ridding our country of all of that very rich culture. I mean, Australia, in terms of settlement and white man culture, is very shallow. We have a very shallow history, and whatever we have is precious to us. It's cherished by us, including our military history, including our agricultural history, the primary industries, the foundation of Australia, and all of the infrastructure here is based on damned hard work and the taxpayer's dollar. And I just see that what's happening with this decolonisation that's being enforced on Australia has taken with it much of our rich history, and I think the people don't like it. And much of that can be seen in the way the voting pattern is going and the support for One Nation at the moment.
Yeah, I was. There was the interview on A Current Affair of all things on Saturday. I never knew it went to air on Saturday, but anyway, it did, and it had the American girl just named Ashley. She had her on, and it showed her and a couple of bits and pieces of sort of. It wasn't flippant, but it was like almost the ill-informed, the emotional, bleeding heart sort of thing. Then they had Jack Gough on, and Jack Gough said, "This is all bullshit." That's all he It's like the old days, when COVID, anybody that had an opposition to that, regardless whether you're right or wrong, the government tried to paint you as some wacko. And if you look back now, what was a conspiracy theory is no longer, it's just pure fact. However, the same thing with this, same approach, it's to rubbish. And Jack Gough, I would have to say, is an extremely unpleasant person. He looks angry, he looks like he wants to rule the world. And when you dismiss people by saying, that's bullshit, that actually does say a lot, doesn't it?
Well, I can't think of anybody that's better qualified to recognise bullshit than Jack Gough. I mean, some of the claims that he's come up with at various times in interviews he's done with various media outlets, what he does is manipulate figures. For example, he said at one stage that I think he was almost quoting me, that I said there was 800 horses left in the park. I was referring in that interview that I did to the areas that were set aside for the horses in the legislation, which has been repealed. And then he said that there were more than 800 horses up there. There are 8,000 shot. Well, he was comparing apples with oranges, and the 8,000 was shot have yet to be demonstrated. I mean, there's no evidence that there are 8,000 horses shot, and I question that figure. And I question it because I ride through those mountains all the time, Mike, and I see a lot of carcasses, but there are not 8,000 up there. And I think that whoever was responsible for shooting the horses may well have exaggerated the numbers as well to justify the number of rounds, the number of bullets that were used to kill these horses. I mean, I'm a Vietnam vet. I spent some time in helicopters in Vietnam, and I can assure you that engaging a target from a moving platform is not easy. It takes a skilled operation and a fully automatic firearm to have any positive results. So what they're doing up there with the firearms they're using is cruel, it's barbaric. It's leaving horses that are, partially wounded to drag themselves around the paddock up there. They claim that they finished them off. And there's been all sorts of things that have emerged since this major public debate erupted, including an interview that the Premier, Chris Minns, did, where he claimed that horses were being shot in the trap yards. Well, that was denied by National Parks and Wildlife Service some years ago. And the reason that they denied it was that they were embarrassed by it. In fact, Chris Minns exposed what was been a basic lie by the National Parks and Wildlife Service. They have, in fact, been shooting horses in the trap yards. And we'd like to know more about that. We'd like to see more of that exposed. I think Chris Minns, may have exposed something there, which is certainly a blindsider for the rest of us who've been watching this whole episode for 15 years. We can now claim that we can demonstrate that they're telling blatant lies about it.
It doesn't paint us very well overseas, does it?
It's embarrassing. I mean, it's embarrassing given the fact that at the opening of the Olympics in 2000, to the world, when we had the opportunity to portray ourselves in any other image, we could have showcased ourselves in any other image we wanted to, but we chose to showcase ourselves as horsemen, bushmen, proud of our animals, the Brumbies, and all of that image, that social, almost spiritual image of Australia was demonstrated to the world. This is us. We're saying this is us. Well, what we're doing now is saying, well, this is us killing our spiritual connection with the land. There is a great connection between man, beast, and the land that a lot of city people don't understand, and it is spiritual. And to those of us who have a great affection for our cultural history and for our Brumbies, the mountain culture, we're hurting. Mike, we're hurting, and there are people here that I know have suffered an incredible amount of mental anguish over all this, emotional stress. And the government even pay us the time to respond to our correspondence. They can't pay us the time to come and meet with us. And our local member, Steve Wan, is an absolute waste of space. I've never seen a bloke. He's in my old seat, the seat that I held for 10 years. And I paid on every occasion. It doesn't matter what a person's attitude to an issue was, I would always entertain them in my office and always sit down and discuss it with them. This fellow is that damned arrogant, he won't even talk to us. And I think that, he deserves to get he's going to get at the next election.
Yeah, but unfortunately, many more horses will die. How many horses are left, do you think, at the moment?
It's hard to gauge because the counting method that the National Parks and Wildlife Service are using is flawed, and it's been demonstrated to be flawed. And I think Lisa Corwin, in a previous interview, that you did explain some of that, and others have too. So I won't go into the detail of it, but the methodology that used basically identifies an area of horses and counts the horses in that area, and then extrapolates that number across the park. Well, the park's 3 million hectares. It's a big paddock. So if you extrapolate a number of, say, 20 horses or 30 horses, whatever it is, across the park, you come up with a massive number. So so what they've done is the system is flawed. And the basis of their engagement with the entire exercise is based on a fallacy. The fallacy is that there were 15, 20, 30,000 horses up there. They were never there. They were never there. So, what we're dealing with is a falsehood. It's a waste of public money. And apart from anything else, the poor damned horses. When you've got mares are separated from their foals. The mares are shot. The foals are left to be killed by the dogs and the pigs. This is not the humanity, the Australian way that I knew, Mike. This is not Australia. I'm sorry, but what we've done is embarrass ourselves internationally.
Just when I think about it, I want to vomit, and I'm not understating this. And normally, we in a past life we dealt with a lot of global affairs and world atrocities. This is on our back door. This is probably disgusting, or as Jack Gough would say, this is bullshit, and we need to stop it. We're going to play a clip later from Jack Gough, a couple of bits and pieces. Angus Taylor, the only polly I see that's put audio to his beliefs. He's actually saying things. I've seen that One Nation is against it. So I haven't seen Pauline come out, and I haven't seen the Labor Party, of course, come out. The Nationals are very, very quiet, and I haven't seen much at all. So except for Angus Taylor, can you just tell me why are they putting their head in the sand when such an atrocity is happening? Are they hoping that no one would talk about it? Because I can tell you, we're about to bring the entire global audience onto this, and it's going to open up and swallow them, because this is not how we should act, not only just Australians, but how the global community should not accept. Why are the politicians doing this?
Well, let me firstly say that the difference between Angus Taylor and the others is that Angus Taylor's a leader. And the Liberal Party can justifiably say that the only future they have is with Angus Taylor as their leader. And if they don't, and I can say this to the rest of the political community as well, that this is embarrassing internationally. And there are people from all over the world watching Australia now and judging us on what's occurring in the Snowy Mountains. So it's to the credit of Angus Taylor and those who attended the rally at Kianda just recently that what we're doing is exposing this atrocity that's going on in the mountains. And I would just say to the other political leaders, for goodness sake, at least take a look at the depth and the integrity of the information you've been giving. Scrutinise the integrity. Ask if Jack Gough is bullshit. It might just happen that Jack Gough is bullshit, and maybe the information that's going in his office is bullshit. I mean, the political leaders in this country have got an obligation to at least scrutinise the information they've been giving. They're not doing it. Penny Sharp is an absolute disgrace. I mean, she just shakes her head and walks away and basically says, "Oh, look at me, but don't look at what's happening." So, and the same with the other political. Chris Minns, I had a brief discussion with him I was invited to the Government House not so long ago for a lunch for Vietnam vets, and Chris Minns was there, and I bailed him up for a while, and he's a very decent fellow to talk to, and I felt reasonably confident that he understood the issue. But I'm now persuaded that Chris Minns, in fact, is led by the left of the party. He's a right winger, but he's led by the left, and he just doesn't have the guts to take him on. I mean, he must be embarrassed by this. Surely he must be.
Yeah, I've just got we invited the RSPCA. Knock, knock, who's there? Well, who's that? The RSPCA, nobody knows because they are very ineffective. But we wrote to them asking for a conversation just to find out what they thought. This is their reply to us. Thanks for reaching out and for this opportunity. However, RSPCA New South Wales is not an appropriate spokesperson for this segment. it is essential to clarify that RSPCA New South Wales has not approved or endorsed the Kosciuszko National Park Wild Horse Heritage Management Plan. That's different. The plan is legislated by the New South Wales Government, who have legally mandated New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Services to reduce the wild horse population in the region by 2027. As an enforcement agency under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1979, RSPCA's New South Wales role is to investigate alleged breaches of this act and, where appropriate, take enforcement action. Okay, so that's from them. Realistically, Peter, that's just all hot air, isn't it?
That's the greatest flick pass of all time. I mean, their primary responsibility is to the welfare of animals in the in the country. That's what they raise funds for. That's what they they plead to government for assistance for. That is to protect animals, and that's, as I said, it's a flick pass. I mean, they just haven't got the guts to take up the issue. It's like the political leaders, exactly the same thing. They acknowledge it, they know it's there, but they're not prepared to do anything about it for fear of embarrassment. Well, get on with it, folks. I'm saying now is the time to pick up the ball and run with it. And they're just not doing it. There's no courage there. And thank God for Angus. He's the only one we know because he's a bush boy. He comes from Nimini Bell. He's been riding around the mountains. In fact, I've ridden around the mountains with Angus, and he's a good horseman. He's a good bushman, and he's a practical sort of a bloke. But he's a leader. He's taken the lead on this issue, and all credit to him. So I'm just saying to the other political leaders and the scientists that are involved in this, how can the scientists justify what's going on with these horses? And they keep on suggesting they've got scientific evidence to support what they're doing. Show us the evidence. Give us the evidence. Show us where it is. And you show me the evidence and I'll show you a fraudster. And that's exactly what's going on in this place at the moment. There is so much misinformation, disinformation, call it what you will. I put it down to bullshit. Jack Gough summed it up pretty well. It's bullshit.
Yeah, I think we need to continue this conversation. We've run out of time at the moment, but if you're up to it, I'd love to have a conversation, and fingers crossed we'll meet anyway in the next week or thereabouts, and we can do a 5 days of broadcasting, fingers crossed again, from the area, and get a true appraisal from the locals. I mean, notice how they do not consult with the locals. They don't consult with those that have done a magnificent job. We have, I think at the moment, probably the next best thing to communism, and that scares me because, I mean, you fought for the country in Vietnam. We did not fight for this, and at the moment, we all need a voice. We all need to be able to do something. Can you just tell me one more thing? The damage that is being done at the moment by 2.0, Snowy 2.0, compared to the inverted commas damage that has been done by the Brumbies, on a rating out of 10, what would you give either?
Well, I have to confess that I'm one of the few remaining supporters of Snowy 2. I think it's a magnificent project, but I have to say that, if you're going to draw a comparison between the environmental impact of Snowy 2 against the Brumbies, it's 10 to the Snowy 2 and 0 to the Brumbies, because in order to construct a scheme such as that, there is going to be environmental impact. I'm just downstream of Snowy 2, downstream of Tantangara Dam. And, we felt the impact of it. We felt the impact of it certainly on our business, restricting the areas that we can ride in and take our guests into. The impact is massive, and certainly more extensive than I would have ever thought it was. And but the end of the day, like the old Snowy scheme, which has given us clean green energy for 75 years, I'm convinced that the engineers that are up there and the 5,000 young Australians and others that are working up there to build Snowy 2 will come up with something we're all proud of. And the original Snowy 2 is listed as one of the modern wonders of the world, and I expect that Snowy 2 will do the same thing. And we just have to be patient and put our hand in their pocket and pull the silver out and bloody pay for it.
That's right. As the cost escalates, funny how they go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, and become almost in this country.
Can I just add?
Yep.
Yeah, can I just add that there's a falsehood in the figures that are being published by almost all of the media, and claiming that there's $44 billion involved in this. The original Snowy 2 pump hydro system was not costing anything like that and will not cost anything like that. It's the extension of the services, the poles and wires, in other words, the transmission lines and all of the extension to the other renewables, the sun power and the wind power and so forth. That's been added on to this cost since, and it's been added on to the cost of Snowy 2. Can I just say that there may have been a cost overrun. There is a cost overrun in Snowy 2, and there's bound to be in a project such as that. But they can't lay the entire blame on Snowy 2. You have to lay the blame at decisions made by the government since then in adding to it these vast areas of wind turbines and solar panels. I mean, that's where the cost is going, and they've lumped that on the Snowy 2, and I reckon that's grossly unfair in a public statement.
Yeah, these transmission.
Untrue.
There's another. You and I could have we need to have a couple of whiskies. I think we get a conversation. But I think, I don't know about you, but my wife would disown me in about 5 minutes. But she does that most days anyway. So look, if somebody wants to, and by the way, let's continue this in the week because I think we need to. But if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
We've got a website, Cochran Horse Treks, and we're on Facebook and all the other things on social media. If not, just come to Adamina, knock on the door and ask for Peter Cochran. I think you'll find me somewhere out here.
Good on you. Hello. It might be the constabulary, you never know. Or the New South Wales Wildlife and Parks, or what they call themselves. I mean, we're coming to take you away. Ha ha. That's right. That's Peter Cochran, pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. This is the Country Telegraph.
Good morning. Well, Monaro is putting out about 140 megawatts, which is about a third of its nameplate capacity. Golden Plains is putting out something like 10 megawatts. Mount Mercer, 10 megawatts. It's still very calm in the south. This wind drought, which has lasted full on a week, is a very serious issue. I think why would hosts sign this contract with an unknown developer? What's driving them? Why are they interested in doing that? The government's already shown that they can change the contracts on solar for any individual Australian, like Australian residents. Why won't they change the contracts on wind developers once these things have been built? That's a distinct possibility. If they do change the contracts, if they drop the large-scale renewable certificates and they stop funding the capacity investment scheme, what does that mean to the viability of these wind projects? I think there's so many issues that have not been properly thought through. And why would hosts want to swap an extremely viable, globally competitive food production industry of wheat, barley, canola, livestock for a highly subsidised, highly reliant industry dependent on government decisions? One change of government, a new leadership in Australia, the entire funding arrangements for these renewable projects will be under threat. I think there are so many counterparty risks for the hosts. There's so much uncertainty, and now the hosts have caveat control delivered to an unknown entity. I think extreme risks. People say, oh, the government won't do that. Government won't do that. Well, government's done it to solar. They've changed the rules, and that's affecting every Australian that's got solar on their roof. They've changed the rules according to the wool price floor scheme. John Kerrin came out and said this is the immutable floor price when he dropped it from 8.70 cents a kilo to 700. Immutable floor price. Within a few months, the floor price no longer existed, and the price of wool dropped to 400 cents. I think whatever government says, you've got to be very, very, very careful and look at the fundamentals. Highly subsidised industry like wind and renewables I think is primed for collapse, for destruction, for changing government decisions. Pauline Hanson gets elected, there won't be any projects. What uncertainty are these hosts carrying? Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. It's Ross Johns here from the Wimmera Valley Environmental and Agricultural Protection Association. Enjoy your day.
Give a hoot, don't pollute our great oceans. We must remove these garbage wind turbines that threaten our wildlife and fisheries.
And welcome back to the Country Telegraph. With all the talk of national sovereignty and the need to rebuild our manufacturing base and future prosperity, it's critical to think about the role our banks play. Not my bank, it's your bank. I've heard that one, something like that. I talked to Robbie about that one. What a lie that was. There is a pretty good basis for believing that the banking structure we have is not serving Australia's national interest. The Four Pillars policy, that is the four private banks, delivers a highly concentrated and uncompetitive banking sector. Now, what can be done to introduce more competition in this sector? Given that consumers, maybe just give them better service. Knock, who's there, not service. And encourage the funding of projects that are truly nation building. Let's ask Robert Barwick, National Chairman of the Australian Citizens Party and presenter of the Emmy Award-winning The Citizens Report. Robbie, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm just trying to build you up, you see.
I haven't met this Emmy.
Emmy, that's right. Yeah, nice girl, works at the local down the road. Tell me about your party's policy and when you merge with who was it now? The
People First Party, Jerry
Yes.
Brennan's People First Party. So as of effectively next week will be the Australian People's Party.
So what's your collective policy then on banks and maybe a state-owned bank?
Yeah, we think that the privatisation of the Commonwealth Bank was a utter disaster for Australia. We went from having a publicly owned bank that we'd had, in the case of the Commonwealth Bank, we'd had it for 84 years. In the case of the various state banks, they were even much older. We'd had them for well over a century. You'd remember, Mike, that with the collapse of the State Bank of Victoria and the State Bank of South Australia, this was spun as, government banking doesn't work. Well, no, hang on. These things like the State Bank of Victoria have been around for 150 years. So you cannot judge it by the last few years where, cowboys took over, or were allowed to take over and try and compete with merchant banks, and it all went pear-shaped. Because what they, by using that as the excuse to privatise, is they gave us a banking system where the credit is the lifeblood of the economy, and the entire direction of credit is left up to the profit-motivated decisions of four big mega banks, which are 80% of the market. And what has resulted? Well, in around 1990 or so, 70% of bank lending in Australia went to businesses, including farmers, small businesses, big businesses, farmers. 30% went to housing. That's completely inverted. It's now 70% to housing. They've just been pumping loans into the big cities and driving up the housing market and giving us the most unaffordable housing in the world and starving businesses of credit. And that's not good. That is not good for the economy. And then on top of that, these are banks that are actually, they're guaranteed by the government, which means by the taxpayer. They're subsidised by the government. It's actually quite extraordinary how much they're subsidised by the government, even though they're among the most profitable banks in the world. But they don't feel they have any obligation to give back by maintaining a basic service in the form of branches, Mike. And you've seen that right across Australia. Since 2017, there's been something in the order of 2,000 bank branches closed, close to 1,000 in regional Australia. Hundreds of towns left without any bank at all, and it's completely disruptive for the local economy in what is actually a productive area of our very important part of our productive economy.
Yeah, I'm just, obviously there's the whole regulatory process, and there has to be a Services Act in there somewhere, that you must provide a service to the community. And I suppose they are to those communities that they're still in, which are getting fewer and fewer because as they head towards digital. How can we, is the government, first of all, are we in this position because the government is just weak?
Oh, 100%. And it's not just with banking, but I think banking is the leading example, whereby by the government adopting an ideology from the 1980s onwards, saying this is no longer an area of government responsibility. Now it's an important area; it's got to be served, but it's no longer an area where the government's going to play a role. Therefore, these private entities have to play the entire role. They only want to do it for profit, and not just profit, maximum profit. And the government rules can sometimes get in the way of that maximum profit. So the private entities, i.e. the big four banks, donate to the political parties, both of them, that form government, right? And they're basically influence the government to take a hands-off approach to them. And then every now and then, when there's sort of a backlash and the public will builds to do something. And the last example of that was after the Banking Royal Commission. 2018 was a big shock to the public, just how badly behaved the banks were. In 2019, the government was implementing the recommendations of the Royal Commission. So what did our big four banks do? They didn't want to have restrictions put on their lending that would require them to lift their standards. So they effectively went on a credit strike. They stopped lending. It frightened the hell out of all governments, the federal government and state governments, that lending, the banks were saying, oh, you're putting too much imposition on us, we're not going to lend anymore. So what did governments do? Josh Frydenberg, Scott Morrison, they effectively, for all intents and purposes, dropped implementing the recommendations of the Royal Commission. There was one particular recommendation, which is a really glaring example of this, where they, bank executives, the appalling behaviour that was exposed in the Royal Commission, including charging fees to the dead and all this kind of thing. Bank executives were to be held responsible for that personally. So instead of just the bank being fined, which is the shareholder being fined, they said, okay, the bank executives need to be fined, $1 million fines for bankers because they're paid lots of money. This was announced. Labor agreed to do that eventually in November 2022. They did a deal with the Greens they were going to enact that. Literally the next day, Labor dropped it because Anna Bligh, the head of the Banking Association, and the banks had all called up Jim Chalmers, furious. No, you're not going to do this, and the government ran away from it. So that's the power of the banks, and against which governments are weak. And what we need to do is instead of having the government as supplicants to the banks, give the government back its own bank, because then it can actually compete with these guys. It should still regulate them, but there's nothing more effective than actually competition, real competition, to make the banks lift their standards and change their behaviour. And that's what we need to bring back with a government bank.
Yeah, and as digital becomes the preferred way of banking, not just from the banks, but from the government and including the world government, because they all want this to happen. They want the CBDCs to become a part of the landscape, which is looking pretty ugly to say the least. It doesn't augur well then for the future for those in the bush, because if they head towards all things online, sometimes you need cash. And if you haven't got an ATM in the town, or you've got a post office that's open Monday to Friday for 6-7 hours, a small one, usually a newsagent and post office, dry cleaners and all that sort of stuff, it puts the bush in a really bad spot, doesn't it?
Well, the bush can't function without cash. This digital stuff I remember back in around March 2023, the Financial Review did a story with 4 top executives from the big 4 banks, and they were saying how, you know, all the towns can go digital. And they talked about, they gave one example of, you know, if you have a like a local, you know, horse race event, you know, a lot of towns have these kinds of things, right? The annual races. And people worry about the security of handling cash. Don't worry about it. Everyone just use a little you know, white tap thing, right? And you can do it all digitally, and everything will be fine. Now, if you've ever been to one of these events, Mike, what you would realise is that this was real ignorance on behalf of the bankers talking about this. Because when you have a lot of people in one place, all trying to use the whatever available digital bandwidth there is, it all collapses. It doesn't work. This is regional Australia. There was a hearing in Junee in 2023 on the Senate inquiry into bank closures, and there's a tourist attraction in Junee, which is a chocolate factory, and the owner of the chocolate factory said, look, the Optus outage in Sydney that year, which had crippled Sydney, he said, we have those 4 times a week. There is no alternative in the bush to cash. The problem is the government has allowed the banks to aggressively close branches and take away access to cash. So last week, we highlighted in a statement we put out, the town of Nannup in Western Australia has a local community Facebook forum, and the post office put up a desperate plea. They were begging the locals, look, tomorrow's pension day, please, the pensioners are going to come up and to the post office and withdraw cash, but we don't have it. Please deposit your cash today in the post office so we can have it to give to the pensioners tomorrow. That is a town, like hundreds of around Australia, that's been left in this lurch because of the banks aggressively closing branches. If you had a public bank that's number one job was service, right? It would do 2 things. It would provide a service to all those towns. We think it could actually use post offices as well. There's 4,000 post offices in Australia. Just roll it out through post offices. But be an actual public bank, though, a proper public bank. Just use the post offices as an agency for retail. But use Australia Post to distribute the cash to those towns to make that cheap as well, and provide loans to businesses and community organisations in those towns to help those towns flourish economically. I do the sort of things the private banks don't want to do because you don't get maximum profit from it. The bank will make a profit. It just doesn't have to make a big profit. What will happen though, I predict, because this is borne out by history, by places around the world where you still have public banks working, doing this sort of thing. Just that sort of, it'll be effectively seed capital going into an area, and there will be prosperity on the back of that. And then the private banks will probably want to come back in because they want to be part of it. They're not going to do it, they're not going to lead it, but they'll always want to be part of it and capitalise on the prosperity that a public bank can help to create.
Really interesting. I know you're pushed for time, so I won't continue. You know how I talk. I don't stop. It's like I actually send people to sleep, but they do enjoy that sleep. Just 2 things. If somebody wants to find out more about you and at the new party, how do they do that?
All right. Well, for now, you can still follow citizensparty.org.au is still up there, and peoplefirstparty.org.au or pfp.org.au. So we're just waiting to get the name approved by the Electoral Commission before we have a formal branding. That takes a little bit of time. But look out for the name Australian People's Party. You can follow me on most social media platforms, at Robbie Barwick, or Gerard Rennick, the former Liberal Senator, who's the leader of People First Party, who's going to be the president of the Australian People's Party. You can find him on most social media as well. Look up Gerard Rennick, People First Party.
Second thing, which is most important, because you're in Melbourne, you're in the home of the greatest game ever, AFL. Did your team win?
Yes, my team did win. I live in Melbourne, but I'm a Queensland boy, and so my team has always been the Lions, and yes, they did win.
You draw the Lions' share of the market?
Yes.
Something like that. Actually, I like the Lions. I'm a St Kilda supporter, but being a St Kilda supporter, we always have backups.
Yeah, you St Kilda supporters are the true believers. There's no doubt about it.
No, we're just masochists. Thank you so much for your time, Robbie Barwick.
Thanks, Mike.
It's absolutely fantastic. This is the Country Telegraph. Let's check the long-range forecast for July, August and September with thanks to BOM.
Welcome to the Bureau's long-range forecast for July to September 2026. With El Niño now established, we'll look at how the forecasts are shaping up for the coming months. But first, let's start with a review of June. June temperatures have been warmer than usual for most of Australia, especially across the southeast of the country. Sydney had 15 consecutive days above 20 degrees in June, surpassing the previous record of 9 days set in June 1919. Across Victoria, many sites had their warmest June night on record, including Melbourne, which saw a low of 16.2 degrees Celsius on the 18th. June has been drier than usual so far in parts of the east and southwest. Elsewhere, rainfall has mostly been close to average. Parts of South Australia and the interior had well above average June rainfall from a northwest cloud band mid-month. Soil moisture is currently average to above average across most of the country. In contrast, soils have been drier than average for this time of year for parts of eastern Queensland and Western Australia. Australia's combined water storages are currently around 66%. While many storages are at capacity, some in the southeast are below 50%. Water storages in southern Australia usually start filling by June. Storage levels in the Murray-Darling Basin, South Australian Gulf and the southwest coast are now higher than last month. Looking ahead, rainfall for July to September is likely to be below average across much of southern and eastern Australia. Above average rainfall is forecast in parts of the far north, but it is the dry season, so rainfall totals are not expected to be high. There are increased chances of unusually low rainfall for July to September across parts of the southwest and the southeast. While rainfall is likely to be below average, seasonal totals are forecast to reach at least 25 millimetres in most inland areas and at least 100 millimetres in most alpine and coastal regions. The streamflow forecast for June to August shows high flows are likely across northern Australia and some sites in the east and southeast. Near median flows are forecast across large areas of eastern Australia, and low flows are likely in much of the south and east, including northern Tasmania. Looking at temperatures for July to September, days are likely to be warmer than average south of the tropics. Across the north, days are likely to be cooler than average. There are increased chances of unusually high daytime temperatures across the southern half of the country. July to September nighttime temperatures are likely to be above average, except around parts of the Northern Territory. While nights are likely to be warmer on average, cold spells and frosts can still occur due to forecast dry conditions and clear skies. So what's behind our forecast? El Niño has developed in the tropical Pacific with a strong to very strong event likely. However, a strong El Niño ocean signal does not necessarily mean strong impacts on Australia's climate. Warmer sea temperatures around Australia add more moisture and energy into the atmosphere, which can lead to heavier rainfall during rain events. Follow our long-range forecasts that take into account all the latest signals from the oceans, atmosphere, and broader climate system. In summary, this July to September, we're likely to see below average rainfall across much of southern and eastern Australia, with an increased chance of unusually dry conditions across parts of the south, warmer than average days and nights across most of the country, and El Niño is underway and is expected to strengthen. Visit the Bureau's website to stay up to date with the latest long-range forecasts. We'll see you next time.
I didn't choose this life. I was born to live it. So was Dad, Pa, his dad, and his dad before that.
Come on, ladies.
You're supposed to be slowing down, you know.
It's payback for all the free labour you got out of me as a kid.
Ah.
I learned from watching my mum and dad and how they work together. So does my sister Sally.
Any trains?
Righto. Feet up.
I'll always remember these days. It's the happiest days of my life. Together as a family.
Oh, you're so lucky I love you.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that about right, is it?
I don't know how you're going to deal with all this.
Deal with what?
$6 million debt?
Most farmers are in this amount of debt. As farmers, we gamble with the weather every day, and it's a risk we take.
You have no idea what I'm going through. Maybe you should talk to someone. Oh my God, no, I'm fine. No, you're not, Alison.
You and your dad's coward.
Play a game of footy, all right?
Where's heaven?
What?
Where's heaven?
The sky, I think.
Can we go there?
Heaven is at Moorabbin in Victoria. That's where the St Kilda Football Club is. No, I lie. It's been hell for us for many years. But we have won one grand final, annihilated Collingwood then. We won by a point. Pretty bad, isn't it? Okay, some of the news that's making news around the country. Iran has no choice but to develop a nuclear bomb, according to a media outlet linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and they've declared in the latest threat to a peace deal. It's coming. No, it's not. It's not going to come here yet. Peace deal. I mean, all I see is that things will get progressively worse unless there is a peace deal. So we've got to keep our fingers crossed. The idea when you start a war is know how you're going to have an idea how you'll finish it. Oops, missed that bit. Aussie farmers are leaving major money on the table as exorbitant federal fees and dragging review timelines effectively lock out a massive group of foreign buyers. Wage increases, environmental protection changes, and a country of origin labelling are some of the new laws farmers will need to be aware of from July 1 as federal and Victorian legislation reforms kick in. Australian beef exports have reached 91% of South Korea's low tariff quota limit, with a near five-fold tariff hike expected within weeks. And England's Test captain, Ben Stokes, has announced he's retiring from international cricket after the third Test against New Zealand. If you want to find out more about what's happening throughout Australia, and most definitely on the land, in rural areas, regional areas, outback Australia, make sure you tune in, follow us and log on to Facebook, X, Rumble and of course YouTube. This is the Country Telegraph.
The banks in our regional communities do all the heavy lifting, while the city-based or digital banks reap big profits. There's something really wrong with this picture. Across regional Australia, local bank branches are disappearing. This puts our communities at a big disadvantage. Regional Australians, young, old, those with a disability, First Nations and small business owners are being left behind. Meanwhile, big city-based and digital banks earn billions, much of it from you. 10 million regional Australians help fund the banking system. But regional banks are left carrying the cost of keeping branches open, providing essential advice on scams and fraud, identifying customers, helping with loan and business advice, and providing secure cash services. In a digital world, branches are an insurance for communities when systems break down. Essential banking services should be delivered by trained staff with local knowledge, not call centres, apps, or city-based and foreign-owned banks. A community service obligation on banks would allow our regional communities to access the essential banking services they deserve.
Welcome back to the Country Telegraph. Mike Ryan, nice to have your company. It's a Monday morning. It's almost 6 after 8 on the eastern seaboard. Queensland political appointments have sparked some debate, but it is business as usual for the politicians, of course. In April 2026, the LNP government appointed former federal opposition leader Peter Dutton to the board of the Queensland Investment Corporation. Just recently, prominent figures were added to state boards, including Gundawindi Mayor Lawrence Springborg to the WorkCover Queensland board. Now, these appointments were announced after the close of business on Friday, so nothing is said until Monday. However, many appointments have had no announcement. Now, News Corp reported this week that Springborg was being put forward to replace Governor Janet Young when her 5-year term finishes later this year. Young was herself a political appointment, being rewarded for her role in leading the government's appalling COVID response as Chief Medical Officer. Anna Powell is a mother, agricultural family business owner, educator, independent candidate for the federal campaign for Monaro in Queensland. Now, we're talking to Anna today about political appointments, the old gravy train, and why all governments do it, and if it comes at a hidden cost. Anna, thanks for joining us. Greetings.
Pleasure, Mike.
Now, tell me, Lawrence, is it a shoo-in that he'll become the next governor?
I have no idea because I'm not behind closed doors with all the police. But what I'd like to know is why it was leaked to the press and it went viral very quickly. So that's a question I'd like to know, who leaked it. And as you know, these people have a direct line to the media, which we don't. And suddenly, they can leak something and it's bang, bang, bang. It was popping up in my news feed left, right and centre and people were sending it to me.
If Lawrence does become governor, truly it couldn't be any worse than the previous one.
Well, it's another political pick. How can you say it's worse or better? It's not democratic. I mean, it's jobs for the boys and girls. You've done your time. Pardon?
You can't vote for governors. I mean, we don't have that.
Mate, well, I was thinking about it over the weekend, Mike. Maybe we should be, because seriously, they are there to rubber stamp more legislation. I mean, the LNP, I was at a 21st at Taroom on the weekend talking to some young people who are doing their apprenticeships and working with their hands to keep the country actually going, which we need a lot more of. And that doesn't mean the government, throwing more money at stuff to get tradies. We need good tradies who are doing real apprenticeships and they're doing them thoroughly and well to keep the infrastructure going. And these young men are, being massacred on taxes and costs. And I tried to explain to them because they don't understand left and right politics. And one of them said to me, "What's left and right politics, Anna?" And I said, well, it used to be that Labor were pro bigger government for the working class, wanted to redistribute wealth, et cetera, et cetera. The right was supposed to be freedom of movement, free speech, pro-business, low government intervention. Well, what's the difference now? The next lot come in, they make a whole lot of new laws. They put in their political appointees that rubber stamp everything on boards. I mean, Peter Dutton is now in the Queensland Investment Corporation getting $133,974 a year to attend 20 meetings. He's never had any business experience in his life. Where's that money going to go? So these political appointees are rampant all over Australia. Once again, I'm speaking from the people I know in our area. Lawrence Springborg walked into a safe seat here, Southern Downs, from the age of 21 years old, 21. and sat there for a couple of decades, and it was lovely. You wine and dine in Brisbane. People just keep voting you in because really, who else gets any attention or media? No one. And then, you know, took 2 times unelected because he was uncontested mayor of Goondiwindi, and then suddenly, well, might leave and go to the governor job where he can rubber stamp all the LNP legislation. They haven't got rid of anything since they've been in. They've added more laws. They strengthened speech laws at the beginning of the year, which people think's a good thing, and it's not, because speech laws shut good people up. That's what they do. Anyone who knows anything about history and authoritarianism, the more free speech or anti-free speech laws we have, it's used to shut up people who speak the truth about people in power. But they present it as, oh, it's about anti-Semitism, it's stopping anti-Semitism, or it's about Islamophobia. It's not about any of that. It's about, if you speak truth to power, they can use those laws to shut us up. So Jeanette Young, as you would know, was the political pick for the ALP because she said whatever they wanted in COVID. She knew what was happening in COVID. I know Jeanette knew what was it because she came out once and said it, and then she shut up. And I said back then, they will promise her the governor's job to be quiet. I alleged that. I wasn't behind closed doors, but Jeanette Young became the governor. It's a freaking joke, and I'm sick of funding it. Like $133,974. Never run a business ever on these boards. Lawrence Springborg's now on the word cover board. How much is he getting for that? Why has he been put there on after Friday with 2 other political picks? And then, you know, people go, oh, but he's a good talker, Anna. I'm like, what?
Now, shush.
What's that got to do with anything? And
I
I don't
want to
know,
ask
Mike,
you
I'm kind of over it. Like, even listening to your mate before, well, I've got another episode for you on that.
Now, I need to ask you something, because you actually brought up something that I quite like, which is probably will end up in a disaster if I quite like it. But I need to put it to you. You mentioned perhaps we should vote on the governor. And I actually sort of think probably that's not a bad idea, because the governor is there to protect, bad policy from Australians. And even though it's one person, it's still there as a sort of a safety net. If we did have voting on the governor, you really couldn't, or could you? Would you do it at that election, or would you do it as a separate election thereafter?
Well, I haven't thought it through. I was just thinking on the weekend, it's crazy that federally and state-wise, these people are political appointees, and then they can just sign off on anything. And I mean, they're supposed to be there as a safeguard, but I mean, they don't do that because they're a political appointee. It's like the government investigating themselves through all these supposedly anti-corruption bodies that we also fund statewide, federally, and nothing ever happens because they're run by the people they're supposed to investigate. So I haven't thought that through, but I will now that you've asked me. You can ask me again when I've thought it through.
Well, we'll have to discuss that in the middle of the week. We can do it over a coffee. Hey, can you tell me what's your views on Chris O'Foolley at the moment and his government?
Well, it's very interesting. Chris O'Foolley went into politics at the age of 23. I'm completely not into career politicians. As I've said before, I went to uni with them. It really went on steroids when I was at Queensland Uni. Anastasia Palaszczuk, I'm not bagging out the LNP. Just I'll go Labor, anyone. I think we're paying them. We have every right to have an opinion. And mine is very educated because I went to uni with these people and I've watched their trajectory. And so Anastasia Palaszczuk walks into a dad's safe seat. Vanala, she was a political advisor before that. Once again, what's her life experience? I personally don't think anyone should go into politics until they're at least 40, because to do it well, I only feel at 53 that I have enough experience, enough general knowledge to step up and say, yeah, I think I can lead Maranoa and I can represent every single person in Maranoa and actually be democratic, which is what we're told all the time we are, and we're not.
on the
So sorry, Christopher Fuller, I didn't really answer that. So 23 had a little brief stint outside of politics where the company he was with went into liquidation. So that's his life experience. And he learnt from Campbell Newman's government when Campbell Newman went in really, really hard and sacked a whole lot of public servants. You do that and they come for you, mate. And I watched them come for him big time. So he was a one-term wonder. And Christopher Foley was in that government. And what he learned, I think, from that is he learned that don't go in and sack the public service and put them inside, offside. Come in and start spending our money big time, which he is. A lot, and mate, the PR team behind that crowd is amazing. Once again, if you just get funneled constant marketing from the LNP. Christopher Foley government. Well, I didn't elect Christopher Foley. So why is it the Christopher Foley government? It's the LNP government and the LNP power brokers. They picked Christopher Foley, not us. So it's not the Christopher Foley government, but the millions that's been spent on marketing, which is, once again, our money, our hard-earned money, is pumping out the Christopher Foley government, I allege, propaganda. But I'm watching with interest. Like, there's money flying left, right and centre, but there's never been an audit on the Queensland government.
Now, you're on the hustings, as I'd say. You're getting in early, and you're just because you're going to run as an independent. What are some of the issues that you've come across? And you probably know a lot anyway, but has anything sort of jumped out at you at the moment?
In what context? Sorry.
In your driving and visiting various communities and.
Well, we just can't sustain the level of government spending that we have. We just can't. And look, I was discussing this with a lovely lady who's doing a bit of getting some community stuff going in her town. I don't like mentioning names without permission, so I won't mention names. But I did say, well, who's funding this? And of course it was the government, and it was a foreign renewables company. And I said to her, well, do you realise that these renewables companies are subsidised by our taxes? That's the only reason they have any sort of business model. And so we're basically paying for them to then take our money and then buy communities with our money, basically. And that the government is bankrupt. And so is the money going to come? I mean, I was down in Moree the other day. The hospital's it's the slowest build, like most infrastructure now. It's just crawling because of union interference, because of costs, et cetera, work ethic. And people don't want to hear the truth, Mike. And that's the biggest problem. Like I keep saying, short-term gain, long-term pain. And that's what we're suffering from. So I probably won't get elected because I tell the truth. But I'll have a crack. That's me.
The bush is
but I'll tell you what,
the bush is
I'll tell you who's listening more is the young ones, because they've got no buffer. The young ones don't have a buffer. Their wallets are hurting.
And I think I think the bush is different than the cap cities or major.
See, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that city-country divide. I think we should be a united country. We look at the strengths of both.
We're not.
I think everyone's suffering from high taxation and high inflation to pay for the massive government.
There is a divide, Diana. There is a divide at the moment.
No, but I'm just saying there shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be. Of course, I agree.
I don't think there should be, and I'm not, and I don't push the divide. That's why I don't. Someone came to me wanting me to join a country party. I said I'm not interested in a country party. I want a united country. That's what I want. I want us to be united and to work together, and collaboratively, not against each other. And when you've got all this political shenanigans going on all the time, and to be honest, I really don't think they want people interested in politics. Another lady, I haven't seen her for a while, and I've never talked politics with her. Played sport against her. I've done a whole lot of things, but I walked towards her and she goes, I don't want to talk about politics, Hannah. And that's how they want people. They want people not talking, but we should be talking, and it shouldn't be all emotional. But they divide people up. They get them emotional. They get them hating on each other. And that's how they want it. And then they're in the back rooms doing their little deals, getting on their boards and getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know, whining and dining in the Qantas lounge, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it should be.
I'll take a poly serious when they give up their Qantas Lounge, Chairman's Lounge membership and
Yeah, they
stop
give it to
flying
me.
around free.
Give it to me. That's what I want. I use
Do
Emirates
you want it
anyway.
though? Do you want to be in there?
I'd lovely.
I'd love to go in there. They'd love
Hey,
to
bit of
talk
a
to
nice
me.
up. We could talk about the woes of the world and how we're not
Well,
paying.
the thing is, if I get elected, I'm not taking Qantas Lounge membership. I'm not taking Virgin membership. I'm not taking any of that, Mike, because
I'll do
once
it
you
for you.
take that, it's an IOU.
Actually, you're dead right. Now, we do have to go. Anna Powell, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
I've got Vote 1 Anna Power for Maranoa on Facebook, and just Anna Power on Facebook. As I've said, this is volunteering. I enjoy it, but I've got limited time. So send me a message. I might get straight back to you. But follow, share, like. Let's get some different people going that
Yeah,
aren't bought and paid for, Mike. Gosh, come on.
good on you.
People, look at that's why we're getting taxed out into oblivion and inflated into oblivion.
That's right.
Because
We're giving
nothing
it away.
from the government is free. And I'm not anti people who work for government. I've worked for the government. I've seen the inside, but it's not free. So
I totally agree. We have to go. Anna Powell,
radio, Mike.
thank you so much for your time. This is
Talk to you later.
Telegraph. Thank you.
It was 2 years for us between doing the Tarwin Park training course on natural sequence farming and actually implementing 15 kilometres of natural sequence farming contours here. And we understand that it will take quite some time for all of the benefits to accrue here, but we are seeing small benefits very quickly. So if I had one regret, it would be that I wish I would have done it sooner. So my suggestion to anyone doing a natural sequence farming course with Tarwin Park training would be to drive yourself to put what you learn into practice as quickly as you can afterwards. My name's Richard Brimblecombe. My wife Eleanor and I run an F1 Wagyu operation here. We're located about 6 kilometres south of Glenmorgan on the western downs of southern Queensland. Our property name here is Clearwater. Clearwater's 1,300 hectares. We've been here for 4.5 years now and got really interested in the concept of natural sequence farming. It aligned very much with how we want to be managing the property whilst it's in our stewardship here, and I did a Tarwin Park training course at Gayndah and really enjoyed the course, got a lot out of it. It helped reaffirm a lot of the things that I felt we needed to be doing here to improve the natural performance of the property here. So the next step for us after having done the course was to then actually put into practice what we learned at the course. We've put in about 15 kilometres of natural sequence farming contours, and we're really excited about what we're seeing as a consequence of installing those. We're seeing water being moved laterally across the landscape, water being held up in the landscape for longer and then gently released progressively over time, which is exactly what we had in mind. We're also seeing a redistribution of surplus flows away from the gullies and onto hillsides where we want to release it. So we're really excited about what we're seeing. We're thrilled with the way the contour banks are grassing up. We're seeing a lot of plant activity, new grasses germinating. It's a great mix and the cattle are healthy, they're doing really well, and we're trying to manage for that biodiversity on an ongoing basis. Our advice to anyone that's doing the Tarwin Park training is put into practice what you're learning immediately once you've done the training. It's something that we've found has been really helpful for us on our journey, and we'd really encourage people that are contemplating it to bite the bullet and get yourself booked on a course and go and do it, and then get yourself ready to implement. Really, for us, it's all about leaving Clearwater in a far better state than what it was when we came, and so we want to leave a legacy that's very positive for the community and the environment and the industry as well. And so Elle and I have spent a lot of time talking about those goals and how the natural sequence farming actually is a really important part of what we're trying to achieve here. So once she understood how it all worked together, she was very enthusiastic to come on the journey as well.
And welcome back to the Country Telegraph. Nice to have your company. We've got noise in the background, just asking them to keep quiet out of the coffee room. Shh. Drop something. Australia's digital ID framework is entering its economy-wide expansion following the rollout of the Digital ID Act 2024, where you'll have no secrets. The next major phase centres on integrating the private sector, state, territory, digital IDs and verifiable credentials to establish an identity system across everyday services where you'll have no secrets. Rhys Gillen is a cybersecurity professional with a background in identity systems. He runs an investigative channel called Tech Win Cyber, focused on digital identity and government accountability in Australia. This includes the digital ID scheme, where you'll have no secrets, and how it connects to age verification and the private sector services being built. Now, Rhys has an interest in the structural risks, such as re-identification, and what voluntary actually means once the system is live. Rhys, thanks for joining us.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Good. I love when they say voluntary. It's a bit like in Ukraine, where they have voluntary subscription for the military. Whereas in fact that is grab them off the street and throw them in a car and take them to the front line. Voluntary is a bit similar here, isn't it? It's voluntary, but don't expect to survive if you don't volunteer.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. They're integrating it into as much of our lives as possible. So eventually it will be very hard to be living without one, as far as I can tell.
Can you tell me the next phase and how you think the citizens will be affected by the digital ID?
Yeah, for sure. So I think you gave a pretty good overview. The Digital ID Act came out in 2024. They built 4 phases. The last 3 and 4 phase are the ones that we're talking about at the moment, which means that private companies are going to be involved in the digital ID system. What that means is that they can apply and become digital ID providers. Providers can be a few different things, and it's a little bit murky about exactly what they're going to be able to do. But you can be an identity provider, you can be an attribute provider. So what that means is that if you're using a service, for example, and you need to verify your full identity, you might be able to use one of these service providers. But if you're doing just age verification, for example, you're going to be able to use specifically a different provider. And we've already seen this in real time. There's a company called Connect ID, which is owned by Australian Payments Plus, which is ingrained in all of our financial systems. And they were actually chosen by Snapchat to be the age verifier for their system at the moment. So if you're using Snapchat, you get the option to use Connect ID, and you can sort of think about them as a private organization, even though it's a bit murky, and a way that one of these private companies will be able to facilitate identification checks or age verification checks.
How secure is it having private companies involved in government business?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess what I would like to do is I'd like to start with the problem statement of the government at the moment. So their problem statement is, if you think about like real estate agents and all of these different organizations that are, when you go to apply for something, they're collecting your data already. Where they're storing that data right now is already extremely insecure. So they're not supposed to, but they probably have it in their emails, they probably have it on file shares in their SharePoint, and there's no real security controls around it. So what the government's trying to do is trying to stop all of that information being spread everywhere, because the security controls at your local real estate agent aren't going to be very secure. So what they're trying to do is make sure that anyone who's going to be an identity provider has security controls in place. So we're sort of changing the risk landscape. It's sort of yet to be seen whether or not it will be extremely beneficial or more secure. There are guidelines in the policy itself that anyone who wants to be a digital ID provider has to follow. And they're things like getting certifications. So one of the certifications that you see a lot in cybersecurity is the ISO 27001. That will be a requirement for these organizations. So there will be baseline security controls involved to becoming an accredited provider, because it's not as easy as just sort of standing something up and delivering identity services. You actually have to get accredited by the government.
I sort of bring up one example. I think this thing is fraught with danger. If you look at TikTok, and TikTok's a global platform. In the US, they decided that the Chinese weren't allowed to have TikTok, and they still have a piece of the action in that, but most of it went to Oracle. And then Oracle is owned by Larry Ellison, who's the major donator to the Israel Defense Force. And so what you would assume is that the siphoning of data, for example, for the Chinese, which was for commercial purposes. It will still happen. For what purpose, I don't know, but they will be able to collect data on those particular users. So, that's I'm not making that up. That's just part of the reality of what's happening. So, if that can happen with an organisation that was heavily scrutinised by the US government, that decided that we need to take it off the Chinese primarily, and give it to another group that does exactly the same, but maybe for more nefarious activities, it says that whatever we set up here, if you are using a third party, a private company, no matter what we put in place, if they want to siphon that information or that data for other purposes, there really is no way that we could safeguard it, is there? Because you are relying basically on their integrity, and our government departments really haven't got the expertise to be monitoring this and advising these companies who are actually setting the whole thing up.
Yeah, you pulled on a lot of threads in that conversation. Yeah, I think the whole TikTok thing is a really good premise. You know, you don't want to have all of your data sitting overseas to a third-party country, which, you know, is potentially an adversary. But then, yeah, moving it to another landscape that might be, you know, from what you've just said there, potentially insecure is also not great. But when we talk about digital ID, we have to think about it. The way that they're setting it up is, you know, primarily secure in a lot of different ways. So it's really hard to say that, you know, Connect ID, for example, is going to be collecting all of this information, because really they're just sort of brokering the service. So let me tell you where my concern lies, is that let's say you're logging into something and validating your identity. You have the place that knows your identity, so that could be like your bank or something like that. And then you have the place that is like getting the information from the bank to validate your identity. So there's two different places. What they have to run through is an exchange to do that. And in the government's documents, now there's no technical documentation as far as I can tell and as far as I can see. But what they're saying is that each side of that transaction won't actually see all of the information. So what will happen is the digital ID accredited provider will basically just say, yes, this person is who they say that they are, and the identity has been proven. So from that perspective, from a data perspective, two sides of the same coin shouldn't technically, according to the government right now, be able to do that. My concern is that that has to run on an exchange. So those two bits of information, the accredited provider and the person asking for your identity, have to run through the government exchange to get that information. What that means is that at some level, and the level that we don't know right now, is that the government is going to be basically the middleman looking at both sides of that transaction. So they're going to be able to see who you're getting your identity provided to and who you've established your identity with. And that's my biggest concern, because if they start giving us the ability to log in with digital ID to our social media accounts, for example, because that would be a really easy way to identify your age and your identity, if that's something they want to do, the government system will be the central place that sees your social media accounts with your potentially real identity. And that's what I like to talk about in my videos, because that's really the biggest concern. And the other thing is that they can change this at any time, however they like, because this is a government system. They make the rules. So if it's a decision that they want to make to change that system or collect different information, then they can.
Tell me this, with the, just say, for example, it all works swimmingly well, at least at the start. Can anyone hide in this country then? Because if it's all digital, everything is fed into into the big government database, again, which is probably run by somebody else. And there's my concerns initially. But if it's all collected and it works as it should, nobody can hide in this country, can they?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. If you're validating your identity to all of your services, so whether it's your water, your power, if it goes into your social media accounts, it's basically going to be hooked into everything. It's going to be centralized to a point. And the way that they're playing it now is that, you know, that's not the case. It's all voluntary. You guys have a choice. Every provider has to give you different ways to authenticate. They can't force you to use digital ID. But we can see that with being in phase 3 and 4 of the first rollout that they've done with this, this is sort of just the beginning. We've seen the way that government has nudged us before into doing things that potentially we don't want to do, especially in the last 6 years or so. So that is really my primary concern with all of this.
Yeah, I mean, my dad passed away last year, in fact, but he always thought that the government, and isn't it funny how we the different, as we go through time, we realise that what we thought was true is entirely false. And Dad always thought that government knew best. They really don't know best, and they, I think the implementation of the digital ID, digital currency, the whole lot, means that you are under the auspice, under the all snaring watch of the government. And here we go. Watch this. Watch this. So we'll just go to a quick. See, isn't this great? We're in a new building, well, in an office, and they do this. So what I'm going to do is have a ding dong with this in a second. So I'll ask you this: the governments can actually decide. Governments can actually decide, can't they, on what happens to you? I mean, if they say we're safe, we're safe and effective, if you don't volunteer, you're going to find that you just can't exist. Tell me this, before the thing comes on again, do you see a black market originating from these things? And it's supposed to block out the black market. But here's something: if you are heavily enforced, heavily sat on, and you want to still do some sort of activity in the marketplace, wouldn't this encourage the black market to become even more powerful and stronger and not infallible, but the other alternative?
Do you mean a black market for stealing people's identity?
Well, I mean, just a black market for just operating in this day-to-day world. I mean, for example, cash. They don't like cash. They want to do. Here we go again. I'll take it over to you for a second.
Yeah, for sure.
Stupid.
Yeah, look, there is potential for everything. I think, if you talk to any person who is working in cybersecurity to any degree, they'll tell you that, systems just aren't secure and they can be hacked. Everything is changing right now. I'm not sure if you've kept up with the news with AI, but it's very clear that, the landscape is going to be completely different in 5 years compared to what it was 5 years ago. So a black market is potentially something that could come to arise. We've already seen lots of kids get around the age verifications anyway. It could be something as simple as, holding up a doll into face verification, or it could be something complicated like, building a model in a 3D rendering tool and, changing its facial expressions to what the identity verification wants you to do. So kids are smart, AI is coming, and there will be different markets. I'm not sure I know what they look like yet because I hadn't put too much thought into it. But yeah, I have a genuine distrust for what this is, because the way that they're presenting it now and what it could turn into are two completely different things. So I'm trying to stay objective and factual about what they're building, because I think that there's a bit of a misnomer as well about, the app being the problem. I don't know right now that the app is the problem. What's the problem is the digital exchange, where you actually flow through your tokens and your authentication through the government digital exchange to identify yourself. And the reason for that is because if you do go and use your ID to age verify, they could just stop the exchange from verifying you because they have control over that exchange, whether or not they want to allow you to do that. And the second thread to pull on is the government's been fighting the social media companies for years, trying to get either people banned from being online or silenced or whatnot. If you're connecting through Connect ID, for example, to do age verification, the government doesn't have to pressure your big tech companies anymore. They just have to pressure the age verifiers. The age verifiers are much smaller. They have much less power than big tech. And they could just simply stop serving you as a customer. It's kind of similar to getting debanked or getting kicked off like a Stripe platform so you can't transact. It's not happening right now, but they're building a system where I foresee it's potentially a capability that they will hold.
I can't wait. I mean, there's an AI or a data center coming near you. And there's one in Utah, which is 104 kilometres by 104 kilometres. That's a very large it's a very large infrastructure, isn't it, a building?
It's massive infrastructure, and we're building them over here. I haven't done the specific research, but there's no way that we have enough power systems to do this.
It's not.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We're just going to keep talking for a second. I got this guy, this idiot above me. There, he's stopped now. He's just telling me that this was just a test. I mean, if it was a fire, I would have stayed in and spoken. Could you just tell me with the data centres? This is just off the topic a bit. They need fresh water, of course, and good quality water. Once it's used, you can't put it back into the system because it's poisonous. What do we do with that wastewater? This is probably something out of your domain, but you would have thought about it. I mean, the electricity, we ain't got enough power because look now, there's a wind drought, so the turbines stopped. But we have the water problem. When they use that water up and take an enormous amount of water, where do they put it? Because you can't put it back into the freshwater system because it is entirely poisonous. Have you thought about that? I need to know what you think.
Yeah, no, I actually hadn't considered what they would do with the waste afterwards. But you raise an even better point. When I was growing up, my mother would grab the water from the washing machine and feed it into a bucket so she could water the plants because we were in such high water restrictions that it would be unthinkable to use water in a data center. There's no way we would let it happen. We spent years building desalination plants so that we could get water from the ocean to drink fresh water. And to think that we would then start using it for data centers is completely insane to me. But the just lack of infrastructure that we have to power, like the power prices right now are just absolute insanity. To think that we would go ahead and have the capability to build infrastructure to support data centers and AI over people is insane. But in saying that, we as a country, we really should be doing those types of things. We should be at the forefront of technology, and being able to build data centers and being able to provide those resources to Australians for cheap compute power hosted in our own country is a really, really important thing. But the lack of infrastructure is just scary.
Yeah, and also those that are programming, because AI is always, it has to originate from somebody. And if they're pointing it in a particular direction and they've got all sorts of things built into it, you are under then, I mean, do we go backwards? I mean, you and I could talk about this because in a past life, we used to do this, and we had 140 million that used to watch it. So we were fairly large. So maybe what we should do is invite you back, because I think what you're saying has some enormous ramifications. And I think personally, I think the data centers, even though they will make our digital life better to a degree, and better inverted commas, the damage that it will do because we haven't got the infrastructure, and we will run out of water. And if there's a wind drought, you really can't rely on the renewables because they're not moving. It's stopped.
Yeah.
So maybe we should go back to coal. What do you think about that?
Look, I think the answer is a diversification of power sources. Nuclear, coal, solar when we can get it, wind when we can get it, whatever we can make power out of in the cheapest way at the cheapest time. I think that's probably the right answer. But just the fact that there's ideological lines drawn across both renewables and across nuclear is just insane to me. It is a national security issue for me that having cheap, reliable power drives a country, and especially a country like ours that's so big where we need to get from place to place. So I don't draw an ideological line. However we can get the power in the cheapest way and whatever way works, as long as we can support the country and the infrastructure, that's the most important thing.
Yep, and we can't do that. Just quickly, so where to from now for the digital ID? What's the time frame? What's your views as we wrap this up?
Look, I think we will see the after effects of this next year. This change is happening in November. We're also getting other changes from local jewelers and other people like lawyers that need to check identification. They're going to be subject to something new in the next couple of months called Know Your Customer, and there's some other anti-money laundering things coming out as well. So it's very good timing that the government has decided that they need to check IDs when digital ID is now coming to the forefront. It's just happy-go-lucky timing. I think that next year will be the year because they will have the infrastructure set up and a lot of the laws that are in place to push people to use the systems. We'll see some news headlines about how people are very happy to adopt digital ID.
Of course. I was waiting for this. I didn't know how much I needed it until I got it. And just quickly, your educational series on your YouTube channel, tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So originally I created a series about identity. It's a specific type of identity called privilege access management. And then I got sidetracked by this digital ID thing. So I've been making videos about digital ID, age assurance, the social media ban. So if you want to check me out, it is TechWinCyber on YouTube. It's my main primary source. In my descriptions of my videos, I have other things like Patreon and Twitter if you want to follow me there as well.
Rhys Gillen, thank you so much for your time. The invitation is there. I would love to chat to you because this past life, this is what we always used to do. And that's why you want to talk about algorithms, we should talk about it off air. The algorithms, anything that mentions my name, we're smashed. And it's really, really interesting. We just can't get away from it. And so it just shows you, and that's why I'm fairly versed in this digital the new digital age that we're about to embrace. It's like an octopus and the tentacles are going to places I don't really like. But that's another conversation. Rhys, thank you very much for your time.
No worries, thank you.
Cheers. This is the Country Telegraph.
Outback Queensland. It's stepping back about 100 million years.
It's soaking in the surrounds.
It's wide open for adventure.
It's where dinner puts up a fight.
And it's your round for new stories. It's switching on easy mode and a whole lot of incredible.
Outback Queensland. It's something else. Book your holiday now.
Australian made means made right here in Australia. But it's more than just where it's made. It means made by Australians, backing local businesses and jobs. Made for the way we live, right here. It's why buying Australian made just feels right. Australian made, made right here.
Welcome back to the Country Telegraph. Great to have your company. Apologise for that intrusion, that rude intrusion from the centre management, I suppose. Next time, maybe let us know. Anyway, we have like digital ID. Do we have much of a say in this day and age? It's those that have a little bit of power become even more powerful in their own minds, and are going to make sure that you know it. Look at those on the land. We blame the government, which it is their fault. For example, the transmission lines and the windmills they're putting up, and destruction of farm life, rural community life, and the environment. Trying to save the planet, first of all, will destroy it. And they get a little bit of power, you see. Then they talk crap. One guy that has enormous power is Jack Gough from the Invasive Species Council. And Jack Gough was featured on a current affair on Channel 9 on the weekend. And Jack Gough, he was there angry and, it's all bullshit. all of its lies, you know, follow the science. And we're saying exactly the opposite to the Brumby Cull. I mean, we had Peter Cochran on before. He knows. He's not an idiot. He knows, and he's a very intelligent person, and he knows what's been done to the Kosciuszko National Park. Just absolutely terrible and disgusting. But the current affair, when they had on a bunch of others on. They had people in saying it was a terrible, terrible thing. But the way they manoeuvred the whole thing around, it showed you that, well, it's just two sides, ones that don't want animals hurt, which is true, and those that, we have to save the environment. We're going to save it by destroying it. And what the Invasive Species Council are going to do, they want to take us back before white man got here. That's what they want to do. They want to change our whole life. And Jack Gough, which you'll be watching this, I would understand, that is bullshit. And you are using absolute propaganda, intimidatory tactics to discredit people just personally. What you say is bullshit. And we're going to challenge you on everything along with the community. We challenge you. We know you are lying. We know it is not about the environment. It's about your absolute, I won't swear, your wacko interpretation on how this country should be. You were not elected. So bugger off and get out of our lives. And how come you have so much influence on governments? Obviously, you're a proxy for government action. So we're not at all happy. So we're going to keep this up. Now, in good faith, what we did, we watched that interview on the current affair, and we put together little bits from that, okay, using other people that weren't on that show, that probably should have been. We used bits and pieces to put it together on how we viewed your aggressive stance on how you think Australia should be. You can bugger off, in my opinion.
Tell my mirror I heard her cry.
This is a group of people using lies and manipulating information.
Angus Taylor come out the other day and stated that the management of the Brumbies have got to go back to the, and the management of the park, for that matter, need to go back to the local people.
This is bullshit.
I think this little mare, if she had a choice between us locals managing her or Jack Gough, I know pretty which one she'd choose.
I want to see the locals back in control.
Let's be clear, this is bullshit, basically.
I want to see the Brumbies protected.
This is bullshit.
And most of all, I want to see the way of life that generation after generation have enjoyed in these beautiful mountains protected.
This is bullshit.
The locals know how to do it.
This is bullshit.
They've done it for a long, long time. No bureaucrat will understand more than the history and the experience of the people who have managed this incredible country over so many generations. But the only way we're going to get that back is to fight for it. So thank you so much for being here today. Well done. Let's keep fighting.
This is bullshit.
These mountains hold our memories, our family history. If home is where you're raised, then this is where we should be. Tell my foal I kept on running. Tell my mare I heard her cry. Tell the mountain I belonged here. Tell the wind I said goodbye. Stay close beside me, little one. The thunder isn't rain. The sky itself is hunting us, and I cannot stop the pain. I gather those I love and turn to face the sound. Though every instinct tells me run, there's nowhere left for us now. These mountains hold our memories, our family history. If home is where you're raised, then this is where we should be. I fall upon the ground, thunder again and again. My heart grows quiet as bullets rain. I thought I had more seasons, more rivers left to roam, more sunrises with my Kosciuszko clan before the mountains called me home. Tell them I was born here, my grandfathers fought their wars. Remind them that this was our home, the snowy mountains were ours. Tell my fool I knew her fear, tell my mare I heard her call, tell my fool I tried to save them, tell the wind how Brumbies fall. Tell my fool I kept on running, tell my mare I heard her cry, tell the mountain I belonged here, tell the wind I said goodbye.
I think I can promise you, Jack Gough, Invasive Species Council, who the hell are you? We want to find out. Why do you have so much power? You know what? I did not know about you. Isn't it incredible? Thought I knew all the uglies, but didn't know about you guys. Absolutely terrible. Anyway, we're going to do our bit. We're going to do our bit to preserve the country that we love. And when you come out and demean people, bullshit. Another radio interview you did, you said, oh, they're the ones that, the anti-lockdown people. Which part of that was right? The lockdowns has been proven scientifically and acknowledged by governments worldwide that it was something that should not have happened. But you sound like one of those absolutely ugly people that used to say it's safe and effective, and it wasn't. It was sudden and unexpected. So, Jack, I was always taught that when you coughed, you put your hand over your mouth. So, Jack, cough. When you cough, when you talk, put your hand over your mouth, because we don't want to hear you. We don't want to hear from the Invasive Species Council. You are an organisation that we need to have a look at. We need to see where you're at and what you do, and how probably a good idea is not what we want in this country. Definitely don't want you. So thank you very much for your interview time on the current affair. It was just terrible. I mean, it is emotive. You do not shoot. You do not kill the iconic Brumby. But anyway, we'll discuss that in the ensuing weeks. This is the Country Telegraph.
Australians are paying more and getting less.
Energy security is economic security. Economic security is national security.
We sit on vast reserves of coal, oil and gas, but we are not fuel secure.
Policy unmoored from physics and economic reality has turned an energy-rich land into a decadent state.
No sector is being asked to bear more than agriculture and regional communities.
We are willfully turning a rich nation into a poorer one.
To keep Australia prosperous, sovereign and free is our duty, and in an uncertain world, our best defence.
Just about it for the Country Telegraph. How do we change things? How do we actually change things? You're not going to change it with sitting on your bottom, are you? You have to get angry. You really have to get angry. Because if you don't get as mad as hell, it will continue. And once it's in place, you will never stop it. We need, look at the farmers throughout Victoria, New South Wales, and the Wimmera and the Walker and these places, Warwick, Nabil. They're fighting for what they believe Australia should be and what people believe, not what organisations like, even the state government. Who says they can tell us, our country, what it should become? Look at the dunderheads in Canberra. Look at the organisations such as Invasive Species Council. Who says they can take us back to the Stone Age, basically, before the white man got here? You came in here, you just conquered this country. We're going to give it all back. We're going to get rid of all the white honky stuff. We're going to give it all back and have it before Captain Chook got here. Give me a break. We need to get as mad as hell. That's the only way we can stand up to these bullies.
We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
That's what we have to do. And that's what we are going to do. My aim is to make sure that I don't know how successful, but we need to stop the culling of the Brumbies. Peter Cochran thinks, what does he say, about 800 could be left? We need to stop it. Do not believe a word what Invasive Species Council says, what the New South Wales government says, the Victorian government, and of course the federal government. Don't believe a word of it. Take your country back and stop this culling of the Brumbies. This is the Country Telegraph. Talk to you tomorrow. I'm very angry. We need to be angry because if you're not angry, it ain't going to work, is it?
They rode with a man from Snowy River. Now they're running for their lives. Tell me how a nation built on freedom lets its wild Brumbies die. What we are doing to the Brumbies is a fucking national disgrace. The sun comes up on mountain tops, the frost still on the plain. The ghosts of stockmen ride these hills through wind and dust and rain. Old Banjo rode a mountain man, and horses wild and free, racing through the snowy high country for all eternity. Their story builds a nation, their spirit still lives on. But the country that once loved them acts like they don't belong. Now the sound above the ridgeline ain't a stock whip anymore. It's the rotors of a helicopter bringing death across the moor. The mountain winds are asking, what the hell while politicians turn their ears. It's the Brummy's last ride. Australia's got to choose, 'cause every horse that falls up there is another piece we lose. From Kosciuszko to the valleys, through every drought and flood, the spirit of the Brumby still runs deep within our blood. You can call it management, you can quote another report, but there's something in these mountains that no paperwork can sort. They're woven through our history, they're stitched into our song, and a lot of ordinary Aussies think this whole thing's gone wrong. The old stockmen are gone now, but their spirit still remains in every wild horse running across those mountain plains. It's the Brummy's last run, the last run down the range, while the people shake their heads and wonder when things changed. They rode with the man from Snowy River, they carried legends through the years. Now we're shooting down our heritage, while politicians turn their ears. It's the Brummy's last run. Australia's got to choose, 'cause every horse that falls up there is another piece we lose. What happened to the country that stood up for its own? What happened to the spirit that built a nation strong? You can't rewrite history, you can't silence every song, you can't tell a generation those mountain legends all were wrong. Some things are worth saving, some things are worth the fight, and freedom still looks beautiful running through the morning light. Hear the thunder in the distance, hear the wild ones call, hear the mountains crying out before the silence falls. It's the Brummy's last run, but it doesn't have to be if enough of us stand up for what these mountains mean. They rode with the man from Snowy River, across the ridges running free. And if we lose the wild Brumbies, what else will cease to be? It's the Brummy's last run, and history's keeping score. Leave the Brumbies to the mountains, let them run forevermore. From the Snowy River country to the plains beneath the sky, the horses of 1,000 stories were never meant to die. No, they were never meant to die.